Stepping softly so as not to be heard in the front room, they left by the alley, following it away from the front of the building to a street on the other side. They walked quickly, and when they were a block away from the white stone building, Matt suddenly broke into a capering dance. "Free!" he laughed. "Free!" He slowed until he was turning a circle, staring at everything and still laughing. The afternoon shadows stretched long and jagged, and the sinking sun made the ruined city golden. "Did you ever dream of a place like this? Did you?" Perrin laughed too, but Rand shrugged uncomfortably. This was nothing like the city in his first dream, but just the same. "If we're going to see anything," he said, "we had better get on with it. There isn't much daylight left." Matt wanted to see everything, it seemed, and he pulled the others along with his enthusiasm. They climbed over dusty fountains with basins wide enough to hold everybody in Emmons Field, and wandered in and out of structures chosen at random, but always the biggest they could find. Some they understood, and some not. A palace was plainly a palace, but what was a huge building that was one round white dome as big as a hill outside, and one monstrous room inside? And a walled place open to the sky and big enough to have held all of Emmons Field, surrounded by row on row of stone benches. Matt grew impatient when they found nothing but dust or rubble or colorless rags of wall hangings that crumbled at a touch. Once some wooden chairs stood stacked against a wall. They all fell to bits when Perrin tried to pick one up. The palaces, with their huge empty chambers, some of which could have held the Wine Spring Inn with room to spare on every side, and above as well, made Rand think too much of the people who had once filled them. He thought everybody in the Two Rivers could have stood under that one round dome, and as for the place with the stone benches, he could almost imagine he could see the people in the shadows, staring in disapproval at the three intruders disturbing their rest. Finally, even Matt tired, grand as the buildings were, and remembered that he had had only an hour's sleep the night before. Everyone began to remember that. Yawning, they sat on the steps of a tall building fronted by row on row of tall stone columns and argued about what to do next. "Go back," Rand said, "and get some sleep." He put the back of his hand against his mouth. When he could talk again, he said, "Sleep. That's all I want." "You can sleep any time," Matt said determinedly. "Look at where we are. A ruined city. Treasure." "Treasure?" Perrin's jaws cracked. "There isn't any treasure here. There isn't anything but dust." Rand shaded his eyes against the sun, a red ball sitting close to the rooftops. "It's getting late, Matt. It'll be dark soon." "There could be treasure," Matt maintained stoutly. "Anyway, I want to climb one of the towers. Look at that one over there. It's whole. I'll bet you could see for miles from up there. What do you say?" "The towers are not safe," said a man's voice behind them. Rand leaped to his feet and spun around, clutching his sword hilt, and the others were just as quick. A man stood in the shadows among the columns at the top of the stairs. He took half a step forward, raised his hand to shield his eyes, and stepped back again. "Forgive me," he said smoothly. "I've been quite a long time in the dark inside. My eyes are not yet used to the light." "Who are you?" Rand thought the man's accent sounded odd, even after Berlon. Some words he pronounced strangely, so that Rand could hardly understand them. "What are you doing here? We thought the city was empty." "I am Mordeth." He paused, as if expecting them to recognize the name. When none of them gave any sign of doing so, he muttered something under his breath and went on. "I could ask the same questions of you. There has been no one in Arid Hall for a long time. A long, long time. I would not have thought to find 3 young men wandering its streets." "We're on our way to Camelin," Rand said. "We stopped to take shelter for the night." "Camelin," Mordeth said slowly, rolling the name around his tongue, then shook his head. "Shelter for the night, you say? Perhaps you will join me." "You still haven't said what you're doing here," Perrin said. "Why, I am a treasure hunter, of course." "Have you found any?" Matt demanded excitedly. Rand thought Mordeth smiled, but in the shadows he could not be sure. "I have," the man said. More than I expected. Much more. More than I can carry away. I never expected to find 3 strong, healthy young men. If you will help me move what I can take to where my horses are, you may each have a share of the rest. As much as you can carry. Whatever I leave will be gone, carried off by some other treasure hunter before I can return for it." "I told you there must be treasure in a place like this," Matt exclaimed. He darted up the stairs. "We'll help you carry it. Just take us to it." He and Mordeth moved deeper into the shadows among the columns. Rand looked at Perrin. "We can't leave him." Perrin glanced at the sinking sun and nodded. They went up the stairs warily, Perrin easing his axe in its belt loop. Rand's hand tightened on his sword, but Matt and Mordeth were waiting among the columns, Mordeth with arms folded, Matt peering impatiently into the interior. "Come," Mordeth said. "I will show you the treasure." He slipped inside, and Matt followed. There was nothing for the others to do but go on. The hall inside was shadowy, but almost immediately Mordeth turned aside and took some narrow steps that wound around and down through deeper and deeper dark until they fumbled their way in pitch blackness. Rand felt along the wall with one hand, unsure there was a step below until his foot met it. Even Matt began to feel uneasy, judging by his voice when he said, "It's awfully dark down here." Yes, Mordeth replied. The man seemed to be having no trouble at all with the dark. "There are lights below. Come." Indeed, the winding stairs abruptly gave way to a corridor dimly lit by scattered smoky torches set in iron sconces on the walls. The flickering flames and shadows gave Rand his first good look at Mordeth, who hurried on without pausing, motioning them to follow. There was something odd about him, Rand thought, but he could not pick out what it was exactly. Mordeth was a sleek, somewhat overfed man, with drooping eyelids that made him seem to be hiding behind something and staring. Short and completely bald, he walked as if he were taller than any of them. His clothes were certainly like nothing Rand had ever seen before, either. Tight black breeches and soft red boots with the tops turned down at the ankles. A long red vest, thickly embroidered in gold, and a snowy white shirt with wide sleeves, the points of his cuffs hanging almost to his knees. Certainly not the kind of clothes in which to hunt through a ruined city in search of treasure. But it was not that which made him seem strange either. Then the corridor ended in a tile-walled room, and he forgot about any oddities Mordeth might have. His gasp was an echo of his friends. Here, too, light came from a few torches, staining the ceiling with their smoke and giving everyone more than one shadow. But that light was reflected 1,000 times by the gems and gold piled on the floor. Mounds of coins and jewelry, goblets and plates and platters, gilded, gem-encrusted swords and daggers, all heaped together carelessly in waist-high mounds. With a cry, Matt ran forward and fell to his knees in front of one of the piles. "Sacks!" he said breathlessly, pawing through the gold. "We'll need sacks to carry all of this." "We can't carry it all," Rand said. He looked around helplessly. All the gold the merchants brought to Emmons Field in a year would not have made the 1,000th part of just one of those mounds. "Not now. It's almost dark." Perrin pulled an axe free, carelessly tossing back the gold chains that had tangled around it. Jewels glittered along its shiny black handle, and delicate gold scrollwork covered the twin blades. "Tomorrow, then," he said, hefting the axe with a grin. "Moraine and Lan will understand when we show them this." "You are not alone," Mordeth said. He had let them rush past him into the treasure room, but now he followed. "Who else is with you?" Matt, wrist deep in the riches before him, answered absently. "Moraine and Lan, and then there's Nynaeve and Egwene, and Tom. He's a gleeman. We're going to Tarvalon." Rand caught his breath. Then the silence from Mordeth made him look at the man. Rage twisted Mordeth's face, and fear, too. His lips pulled back from his teeth. "Tarvalon?" He shook clenched fists at them. "Tarvalon? You said you were going to this Camelin. You lied to me." "If you still want," Perrin said to Mordeth, "we'll come back tomorrow and help you." Carefully, he set the axe back on the heap of gem-encrusted chalices and jewelry. "If you want." "No, that is—" Panting, Mordeth shook his head as if he could not decide. "Take what you want, except... Suddenly Rand realized what had been nagging at him about the man. The scattered torches in the hallway had given each of them a ring of shadows, just as the torches in the treasure room did. Only, he was so shocked he said it out loud. "You don't have a shadow." A goblet fell from Matt's hand with a crash. Mordeth nodded, and for the first time his fleshy eyelids opened all the way. His sleek face suddenly appeared pinched and hungry. "So..." He stood straighter, seeming taller. "It is decided." Abruptly, there was no seeming to it. Like a balloon, Mordeth swelled, distorted, head pressed against the ceiling, shoulders butting the walls, filling the end of the room, cutting off escape. Hollow-cheeked, teeth bared in a rictus snarl, he reached out with hands big enough to engulf a man's head. With a yell, Rand leaped back. His feet tangled in a gold chain, and he crashed to the floor. The wind knocked out of him. Struggling for breath, he struggled at the same time for his sword, fighting his cloak, which had become wrapped around the hilt. The yells of his friends filled the room, and the clash of gold platters and goblets clattering across the floor. Suddenly, an agonized scream shivered in Rand's ears. Almost sobbing, he managed to inhale at last, just as he got the sword out of its sheath. Cautiously, he got to his feet, wondering which of his friends had given that scream. Perrin looked back at him, wide-eyed from across the room, crouched and holding his axe back as if about to chop down a tree. Matt peered around the side of a treasure pile, clutching a dagger snatched from the trove. Something moved in the deepest part of the shadows left by the torches, and they all jumped. It was Mordeth, clutching his knees to his chest and huddled as deep into the furthest corner as he could get. "He tricked us," Matt panted. "It was some kind of trick." Mordeth threw back his head and wailed. Dust sifted down as the walls trembled. "You are all dead!" he cried. "All dead!" And he leaped up, diving across the room. Rand's jaw dropped, and he almost dropped the sword as well. As Mordeth dove through the air, he stretched out and thinned, like a tendril of smoke. As thin as a finger, he struck a crack in the wall tiles and vanished into it. A last cry hung in the room as he vanished, fading slowly away after he was gone. "You are all dead." "Let's get out of here," Perrin said faintly, firming his grip on his axe while he tried to face every direction at once. Gold ornaments and gems scattered unnoticed under his feet. "But the treasure," Matt protested. "We can't just leave it now." "I don't want anything of his," Perrin said, still turning one way after another. He raised his voice and shouted at the walls. "It's your treasure, you hear? We're not taking any of it." Rand stared angrily at Matt. "Do you want him coming after us? Or are you going to wait here stuffing your pockets until he comes back with 10 more like him?" Matt just gestured to all the gold and jewels. Before he could say anything, though, Rand seized one of his arms, and Perrin grabbed the other. They hustled him out of the room, Matt struggling and shouting about the treasure. Before they had gone 10 steps down the hall, the already dim light behind them began to fail. The torches in the treasure room were going out. Matt stopped shouting. They hastened their steps. The first torch outside the room winked out, then the next. By the time they reached the winding stairs, there was no need to drag Matt any longer. They were all running, with the dark closing in behind them. Even the pitch black of the stairs only made them hesitate an instant, then they sped upwards, shouting at the top of their lungs. Shouting to scare anything that might be waiting. Shouting to remind themselves they were still alive. They burst out into the hall above, sliding and falling on the dusty marble, scrambling out through the columns, to tumble down the stairs and land in a bruised heap in the street. Rand untangled himself and picked Tam's sword up from the pavement, looking around uneasily. Less than half of the sun still showed above the rooftops. Shadows reached out like dark hands, made blacker by the remaining light, nearly filling the street. He shivered. The shadows looked like Mordeth, reaching. "At least we're out of it." Matt got up from the bottom of the pile, dusting himself off in a shaky imitation of his usual manner.